Well, isn't this interesting? Our very first Tog-Talk podcast, which is broadcast on YouTube in video as well. And you can see now our glorious faces in beautiful, stunning 3D color. I'm interviewing somebody called, what's his name again? David Emery. David Emery. I've known him for about 4 years. He joined one of our early master classes, and he's got a good journey. He's a good articulator. He can speak well. He's interesting to listen to. And if you're new on your photography journey, if you've only become a photographer in the past few years, I think he's going to have some interesting things to say. And if he doesn't, I definitely will. Thanks for coming along and watching this episode 29 of Tog-Talk. My name is Kevin Ahronson. I've had a particularly stressful week. I'm taking no chances. I've just written down your name. I might actually keep that in. It's a great way to start.
I'll get a banner here and just put my name on it. Yeah.
Oh dear. I had a workshop last night, and I gave everybody labels. And the guy at the far end of the table, halfway through the evening, I couldn't see it. It's too far away, so I still had to ask him what his name was, even though I absolutely knew who he was. But you know, old age, it happens. And welcome to Tog-Talk. My name is Kevin Ahronson from Hampshire School of Photography, and today we are with David Emery. Yay!
Yeah.
Hi, Dave.
Hello, Kevin. How are you?
Hunky dory, mate. How are you doing? What's happening in your life?
Oh, bits and pieces, working hard. Just running around. I'm on a few days off at the moment, so I'm having a bit of R&R. I've just finished a long piece of work with my company with a particular supplier, a customer. That's just come to an end just as my holiday started. So when I go back to work on Monday, I'm going to be hopefully told who my next client will be for the coming weeks and months.
And isn't it good to know that in all this time off, you spent all of it with your camera?
No. I was out with the camera yesterday. I won't lie. The big camera was on my hanging from my shoulder yesterday. We was out in Windsgrope Park with my wife and a friend on the horses. So yeah, I've got some post-processing to do after this call. Just some pictures of them in the park. But yeah.
I look forward to seeing them. So this is all about discovering your photographer's journey. You know, we've done a few of these, and just picking photographers at random. No one famous, no one who is, super amazingly clever. I mean, obviously not as clever as like what I am.
Exactly.
But I wouldn't want the competition. But people I respect. I like their work. I've known you for 4 years.
2019 we met. Yeah.
4 years. Yeah.
Yeah. 4 years. Yeah. About 28. But yeah, 2019. I started Masterclass 2 in 2019.
Yeah. Would have been
in around that September time, I think it was.
Yeah.
But obviously, I came to one of your one day, or one evening events, whatever it was. I can't remember what it was called.
Was it a viewfinder, an evening
event?
It was
when you get the critique, you ask people to supply 3 pictures and you have a look at their work. Yeah.
Well, last night I was at the viewfinder replacement, which we now call the photographer's evening, which is so much better. The format it's a bit longer, and we spend like 90% of the evening looking at people's individual journeys and the problems they have and analyzing their own problems. And the conversations I have afterwards, and I've had come through by email from people saying, it just connected with me talking through all those issues. So the photographer's journey is bigger than I thought it was when I first got into it, because obviously I talk about it a lot. And sometimes I wonder whether I talk about it ad nauseum. But the more I discuss it with other photographers, the more I realize actually how very important it is to everybody, because everyone struggles to some extent. But it's not just photographers, regardless, whatever your hobby or interest is, your journey is always a a zigzag, like one of those charts at the bottom of the bed in hospitals, up and down, up and down. It's never a straight line. And so we were analysing last night people's journeys and looking at the problems they were up against. And it's pretty predictable from my perspective. I've seen it all
Mhm.
before. But when you get people to stop and look and analyse, you can see light bulbs going on. Oh,
Mhm.
yeah, that's exactly right. So
Mm.
today we're looking at yours. And I'm going to hit. So I want you to do most of the talking. I mean, I don't mind talking.
No, no.
um, so my plan is to let you do most of the talking, but it wouldn't be right of me to let you have too much of that. So I will interrupt occasionally. So your first question, I've got them up on the screen just to my left. Going back, mate, to your earliest days with a camera, what drew you to photography? What creative tug? What was the creative gravity that sucked you in and said, I want to do photography, I want to buy a camera. I don't want to do watercolors or learn ballet dancing. I want, I want to play with a camera. What was it that drew you to photography? Tell us about your early days.
So so it's a good question actually, because it's a lot of it actually I think stems back to my late grandfather on my mother's side. He was um, self-taught at everything he did. He was a miner in Wales, came up just at the start of World War II. Um, and post World War II, he was wiring radiograms for Michaels. He was a cabinet maker, a carpenter that turned himself to an electronics engineer. And even then, when he was retired, when I was a small boy, he'd be the kind of person that would sit and make with a little electric motor and a battery. Would sit and make a little hovercraft and stuff. But he had, when televisions were in the street, he had the first television in the street where he lived, and it was a big road. First telephone, but he had a cine camera. He had a Super 8 cine camera, and he had 35mm cameras. And I always used to play with them. There was a couple of broken cameras he had. And I think it was about my 14th birthday, I got my first SLR, which was a Praktica.
Oh yeah,
So the old East German Praktica cameras, or whatever they're
looked
called.
like tanks, weren't they?
They are brilliant. I mean, I've still got it. It's actually on it's sat behind me at the moment in a bag. It's slightly damaged, but it came with a couple of Carl Zeiss Jenner lenses. So even though it was the old 42mm screw mount, and that's how much I used it, because it's a screw mount, not a bayonet. So that got me started. And obviously you went through that process of, you take 24 or 36 pictures, then took them to the chemist or sent them off. And a few days later, you saw how bad you were. Um, and I used to take quite a lot of pictures, mainly of the cat, especially at the end of the roll. It was always ones of the cat, laying on the front of the fire or whatever. Um, you know, just to finish a film off so you can get it developed. And I had some success, but nothing majorly. But then, time's obviously changing, the advent of digital. I was in America when I went from, I think it was the APS-C, the compact cassette type or roll. I had a couple of Olympus cameras using the compact, but then I went from that same camera to the digital version, the very small digital version with Canon, and that was great, but it was 1 megapixel, 2 megapixels with a
Yeah.
2 times optical zoom or whatever, and it was okay. I got some good pictures of where I lived in America and stuff, and I was staying out there around about 2000. I was living in the States for a couple of years working. And it wasn't until I came back and I was just looking at cameras and I thought, oh, I'm bored. And that's when it's about 2005. I opted into Canon. I had their digital cameras, so I went and bought a DSLR.
Was it a
And
350D by any chance?
that was exactly that model. It was a 350D.
My first digital.
Yeah, picked up a couple of kit type lenses and other lenses. I had a 75 to 300 zoom and bits and pieces. And then for years, I'd get it out, take some nice pictures, put it away again, not use it. And I was going through that definite, yeah, you like it, use it, find another lens or whatever. And I'm sat in my garden one day, and we had some blue tits nesting in a box. So I got the big lens out and was sat there with a tripod for ages trying to get some pictures. And they were one of the pictures I took along to the viewfinder, the course. And I thought they were pretty good. But then when you look at them, you can see they're blurred, they're out of focus, they're grainy, because obviously I've had to pump everything up. And to be honest, I didn't know what I was doing to get that picture. It was just by chance. And because you could see what you were getting through the digital straight away. You could take thousands of pictures and not have to worry about, waiting for them to be developed. I was just getting the odd picture, or a couple in 100 that looked reasonably good. So that, of course, being a bloke, I thought, I need a new camera body. And this is around about the 2018, 2019 mark. So I got the Canon 80D. That kind of fell in my price range, and then started using my existing lenses, then realized one or two of the lenses were damaged. So I bought a couple more lenses, and then by chance joined your courses. But then at the same time, I was typical bloke. I research all my activities through YouTube, so I teach myself from YouTube, and other websites are available. But I was looking at photography courses, and people that are using cameras and giving you good tips and techniques, and everybody was talking about mirrorless. I'm like, what's this mirrorless lark? So I thought, well, I've got these lenses, I'll stick with Canon. So I upgraded to the EOS R. So I got the first mirrorless. I haven't changed since. I am looking at some of the newer versions, but they keep changing them quicker than we can.
Yeah.
When Apple change a phone, or Samsung change a new phone. So at the moment, I'm content with what I've got, but I am on the lookout for a new body. But funds don't permit at the moment. But yeah, I'm in with the Canon family, so I've got about 4 or 5 lenses, and I'm a Canon. But I think it was just that your question talked about what was that spark with photography. I just like capturing moments. I have no real. And when I met you for the first time, I have no real niche area that I was interested in. I wasn't someone that was coming to you as a portrait photographer, or as a landscape photographer, or a macro photographer. And my love of macro, Kevin. Come on.
Legendary. No.
But it was just more of a generalist, really. I've taken a lot of candid pictures, and still like trying to not let people see a great big white lens appear around a corner while you take a picture of them. But it's but I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, really. But and I still feel that way at the moment. But my actual technical knowledge on cameras has greatly increased, and
Good.
and obviously having masterclass really, really helped me understand the technicalities, not of the camera, but of the process of taking a picture as well.
For those who are listening to the first Tog-Talk, and this is your first one you've listened to, any reference to masterclass is a 1-year course we run at the Hampshire School of Photography. It's a foundational course teaching all the basic building blocks of photography, but then you also look at photographing people, photographing landscape, working with flash, shooting macro, which is David's favorite. Not really, and editing with Microsoft Photoshop, with Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom. You said something, David. You were talking about the rate at which models are changing and updating,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if I'm accurate with this, but it feels to me like this is something which has been accelerated. I feel primarily by the likes of Sony. Once they started bringing out their mirrorless cameras, which just got better and better and better, everybody else then jumped onto the bandwagon, and now everybody upgrades their cameras yearly. And I hate this. I don't care what technology is possible. I hate the fact that photographers feel pressurized to change their cameras so frequently. And even when Canon was just making DSLRs, I'd buy the 5D. So I had a 5D Mark
Mm-hmm.
II, then a Mark III, and eventually a Mark IV. And they would often be 5 years apart before they changed them. And some people would criticize them for that. I thought it was brilliant because, in terms of financial resources, it's a much better way for hobbyists and even professionals to go about running their lives and conducting their finances. Changing your camera so frequently to keep up with the latest technology is nuts. It diverts the important elements away from taking the pictures and learning the skills to, I've got to have the best camera, I've got to have the latest, I've got to have the newest IBIS system, or the ability to track a bird at 3 miles away. I'd much rather that people changed every 4 or 5 years and they actually spent their time growing their skills. I think that would lead to better photography.
And I think if I hadn't have taken on some courses and actually understood, that process you're talking about is actually understanding, what it is you're trying to take. How would you set your camera and take? Because you don't have to have the best camera. You don't have to have the latest Nikon, the latest Sony, the latest Canon to take the best pictures. If you're a sports photographer, yes, you might want some of those features. But if you're like, with Sony, they've got some amazing megapixel cameras. You'd need a supercomputer just to actually open the files, the raw files, and start editing on them, or you'd need a bank of discs with air conditioning on them because they're taking up so much memory.
Yeah.
It's you know and I've been in that trap, and I look every week and think, oh, I need that one, and I even become a bit of a, not a snob now, but it's a bit of a, I'm looking at, I have a Canon EOS, the EOS R, which is approximately 30 megapixels. Now there's two cameras I'm looking at, which is the EOS R6 and the EOS R5. EOS R6 is cheaper, still more expensive than my body, but I'm losing approximately 6 to 10 megapixels, depending on the variant you go with the EOS R. And then there's the R5, which obviously costs a lot more, but it's 45 megapixels. There's me thinking, I've got to get 45 megapixels. And actually, I've tried, a couple of friends have got the R6, and it's an amazing camera. But you think, oh, it's got less megapixels. It can't be very good. And it is. It's a very good camera. But I totally agree with you that you don't have to keep, you don't have to keep changing your camera. Yes, the autofocus systems on those cameras is very, very good. It's class leading. But, it depends what you're trying to do with it. If you're setting up for portrait, or if you're doing landscape or whatever, do you need all that eye tracking stuff that it's giving you? And the bit that really frustrates me more than anything is all this video stuff that comes with cameras these days. I want to take pictures. I want to take pictures. I don't want to record videos.
Here's the thing. I've got this online photography assessment tool. It asks 45 questions for photographers, gives them a personalized report, and it gives me a whole load of data, stack loads of data about what photographers think, what they believe, what they use, how they behave. And I can tell you, certainly in Southern England, only 2% shoot video with their still cameras. 2%. It's nuts. Now in America, it's probably different because they've all got YouTube channels.
And they're all using their mirrorless cameras as their camera rather than a computerized just webcam. But yeah, it just frustrates me that we're paying for all this tech and I don't need it. I really don't need it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I completely agree with you. Okay. The
only thing I was grateful for, obviously, with the Canon is I could adopt all my lenses. So actually, all my glass I use at the moment is EF, which is the EF mount for the DSLR systems.
The DSLR, yeah.
And then I have an EF to RF adapter, which is very, very good, actually. Canon have made a good job of that, and I get hardly any noticeable difference in focusing speeds. No real degradation at all. I know some of their new lenses, actually purpose-built lenses for the mirrorless, are good, but
so I think I've got to explain for people who are listening who are not Canon users, what you're talking about is the fact you're using old DSLR lenses on a mirrorless camera. There's an adapter for that. So you've got that adapter. You're plugging in these old DSLR lenses onto it, and it's working fine.
It is absolutely fine. And you think, the camera body is, like you say, it's a big investment, but so are the lenses.
Yeah.
And those lenses will last a lifetime. If you look after your lenses well, they will last you a very long time. And
how many times have you had conversations where people say, "Oh yeah, but you should be buying the glass," and then they still go out and buy the latest camera? You probably picked up that I just handed back. I had for just over the week access to a Nikon Z9, which is a $5,500 camera without lens.
Mr. Grants?
It was, yeah. He offered them just out of the blue. He offered them out of the blue because he felt it would be good for me to understand what Nikon is doing, because I've never used a Nikon ever, not even in film days. So I had a 70 to 200 lens and a 50mm prime, f1.2 prime. The lens, the 50mm, I think was over $2,000. It's a very expensive system. And my first reaction was, look at the size of that thing coming from a Fuji crop frame user.
Mm-hmm.
and I still have Canon full frame as well. But this was a big beast, heavy beast. And when I first picked it up, I thought, well, I'm going to take this out for a walk along Basin Stoke Canal and see what we can do. And I got about 50 yards, and I was saying to Linda, "God, this was a mistake. This thing's so heavy." As it happened, I got used to it. In the end, I didn't notice the weight, which is good. When mirrorless first came out and people were complaining about heavy DSLRs, I thought, what are you moaning about? And then once I went over to mirrorless, I realized actually they are lighter and it's quite attractive. But it was not so heavy that it was a problem. Now, the thing is, this is prime product. This is the kind of product that the guys who are standing at the side of the football line of Premier Division, this is the
Mm-hmm.
photography that would be shooting at the Olympics. This is the kind of camera that the very best sports photographers whose lives and livelihoods, not lives, whose livelihood depends on them getting the shot that no one else has got. This thing will shoot with the right tweaking up to 120 frames a second.
Yeah, it is nuts. Yeah,
It
yeah,
is
and you,
nuts.
yeah, and like I say, you're carrying the server on your back just to capture the
Yeah, yeah,
picture.
yeah. But the point is, even though it was massive, for a hobbyist
Mm.
photographer, which most people I deal with are hobbyists, it's total overkill.
Mm.
But if someone were to offer me, would you like this? I'd
Mm.
bite the hand off.
Yeah, if you're listening, Nikon or Canon, we wouldn't mind trying it for 2-3 years. Yeah,
It was astonishing to use.
yeah,
It was the difference between driving a really high quality upmarket Volkswagen and
yeah.
then jumping into a McLaren.
Don't mention that name, but yeah,
I only said McLaren because I knew you used to work for them.
used
Yeah,
to be
but
able to
you
work with.
understand the
Yeah.
quality was just on a very different level. Build quality, the fill quality, the speed of reaction of the focusing system. It was completely breathtaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, I have had a play with an R3. And if someone offered me, a £6,500 R3 body tomorrow, I'd snap the hand off. But I'm not going to buy one myself.
No,
You know.
no.
Yeah.
No, in the same way that someone said, "Here's an Aston Martin,
Mm.
and you haven't got to pay for it."
No,
Oh,
I
okay,
wouldn't. I
take it
wouldn't.
off your
I
hands.
wouldn't. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
Aston Martin. I used to work with you as well, but I
Oh,
wouldn't buy
did you
one.
really?
I wouldn't actually spend my money on one.
So some people say that, but to me, it's more about the association with my childhood and James Bond films. There's nothing logical about it. I just look at it and think, "Oh,
Uh,
it's gorgeous."
yeah. Yeah.
No logic, and most things are bought not because of logic, but because of emotion. Next question:
Mm.
how has your photography style evolved over time? Do you think?
Mm. I think it has evolved. I wouldn't say a huge amount, but I feel two main things really, and I know that a lot of this has actually just come from not understanding the camera, but understanding the techniques and the style of photography. But for me, if I go back to masterclass as well, it was those first, I think probably four lessons, those first four of the 10 lessons in masterclass
Yeah, the
that
foundation.
really, the foundation. So understanding light, shutter speed, aperture, and ISO and bits and pieces like that, just to really, but also just going through those and in composition. So I think what's changed greatly with me is composition of
Yeah,
pictures.
yeah,
I'm able to think of a picture now and see a picture in a way that I'm not just snapping everything in the center of the screen. It's not center focused. It's framed in a better way, but at the same time, understanding when I want depth of field versus no depth of field, for example,
yeah,
or I want to open up the aperture, so I can understand when I'm doing those things. So it has greatly affected my ability to sit down and take some pictures. I mean, if I go back, say, to COVID times, good old COVID, who remembers the COVID times, eh? But I remember, sitting in my garden with one of our dogs, and she loved playing with the sprinkler. And I go back to when we had the bird box in the garden before I'd done any photography lessons, and the faff that I had trying to set the camera up just to take some pictures of of a fast moving object like a bird coming into feed in its bird box, versus then watching a nutter Jack Russell running around the garden with a hose sprinkler. But I was able to get 10 times a better quality shot, freezing the picture, freezing the water droplets, getting that, picture balanced and correct.
Yeah.
Just sat there on my grass, just letting her do her own thing. That has greatly changed my ability to imagine shots. So whether I've been, in a studio like the studio you guys have at the headquarters there, taking some shots of a model, or out landscaping, taking some landscape shots or whatever, I'm just able to sit there and think, right, in my own mind, what I want. I'm not worried about the camera. I'm just thinking, what's my shutter speed? What's my aperture and stuff like that going to be? I can start before I take the pictures. I'm set up and ready to go.
This is so good. Last night at the photographer's evening, we were talking just about that. One guy at the back of the room, he was talking about how we so often let the camera get in the way of our shot. And what he's talking about is that in our head, we're so kind of calculating aperture, shutter speed, ISO, exposure triangle, law of reciprocity, which button do I press, that the camera, the technology, the mechanics, the whole this little box with the lens on the front is sabotaging our ability to get the shots we really want. Now, it's not actually the camera that's doing it, it's our inability to master it, because we don't spend the time mastering it. If you look on a website, we have this thing called CCC, which is Camera Control Create. In other words, first of all, you've got to master the camera. Then you've got to master the control of the camera and the scene and the light and the focus to get the shot you actually want rather than the one the camera wants to take. And once you've mastered the camera and your ability of control over it and the shot, the scene, then what comes is a confidence level which gives you the ability to create, because you only really truly release that creativity when you don't have to think about the camera. When that camera is unimportant, in the same way that I don't have to think about changing gears and driving a car, it just happens. All I think about when I jump in a car is where I'm going. I don't think about which pedals I'm pushing down or which way I'm pushing my gear stick or which way I'm indicating. I just think about the journey. I just think about, I want to get from here to here, off I go. That's the way it should be with cameras. But we do not spend enough time really getting to that point when the camera is an extension of our body so that we don't have to think about it. So effectively, it gets in the way of our shot. It gets in the way of our creativity. That's what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think as well, there's two aspects to that. I would like to think that if someone gave me a camera I wasn't fully knowledgeable of, I would still be able to say, if the owner of the camera was just by the side of me, they say, "Can you take a picture for me?" I'd like to be able to think that I can say to them, "Right, okay, so I want," or can you, even if you said to them, "Can you set this aperture, this shutter speed, or this ISO range?" Because I can tell now by the type of light or the type of environment or where I'm stood, how I want to take it. If I'm doing fast sports, or if I want to capture motion blur, or if I wanted to capture lighting, or if I wanted to add some additional lighting, I feel that I've got enough knowledge in this old box to actually compute what I want, regardless whether I'm taking a picture with a Sony, a Fuji, a Canon, or a Nikon, or other makes. So for me, it's having that understanding of the environment I'm stood in. Yes, it's lovely to know where I've got all these fancy buttons and shortcuts and custom menus, but then everybody does it differently. So if someone wants to give me the exact replica of my camera, I can guarantee I'll probably take a slightly different picture, because it's knowing how that camera is set up. So it is nice to understand how you set your camera up and not have to put the camera down to look at something to put the button on. It's nice that you get familiar with, you know what your hands and fingers are doing while you're holding the camera ready to take a shot. And but just understanding the key things, what I want to capture here. And that's something that really came very quickly from doing those first few lessons on Masterclass.
Yeah.
If I go back to, I think one of my proudest pictures from the Masterclass days was, I don't know if you remember the match lighting. So where we talked about shutter speed.
I do, yes.
Yeah, so the match sparking,
Very
capturing
striking
that
image.
Yeah, that was that came out way better than I was expecting, because obviously if you see this, and I never photographed the setup, so obviously the little rig with the flower pot holding a match, my finger coming in holding another match to light that match, while holding a manual shutter release button in my other hand, and just putting the camera on burst mode, and then like missed, right, okay, another match, and you try about 40 times, but the actual picture come out, once just a little bit of editing, and it wasn't a huge amount either. It came out, because it was in the very early days of masterclass, so we hadn't gone through all the editing classes. So to actually just find out what I wanted to do, and that was a really pleasing picture to get. And it just came from just, okay, so I need to do that, right, okay, so that balances with that, and it was just that understanding that helped me gather that process. So that for me is where that for me was like probably the biggest light bulb moment. It's not about the technology behind the camera, it's about understanding the science behind the pictures.
Interesting. Do you know, one of the questions I was going to ask you is, what do you think? Well, no, the question was, I'll read it off the screen. Can you think of any light bulb moments in your journey? you just given me one. That's
I think that was one, definitely. Understanding. If I say to anybody who's doing photography, is understand shutter speed, aperture, and that the ISO triangle, the exposure triangle. Yeah, if you understand that, and then I think the other big light bulb moment for me is even just looking at like your pictures, other people's pictures online, composition, and just some of the just the rule of thirds. To be honest, I've been taking pictures for years. I'd never heard of the rule of thirds properly. Someone, and you see all these grids that can come up on the back of a camera now, and like you say, some of those rules are there to be broken, but just understanding a good picture and a bad picture, and just because of composition, nothing else. Same light, same exposure, same shutter speed, just through composition you can go from a very average boring picture to a very good picture, just through composition
that's pleasing on the eye.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what do you think the biggest challenges are for anyone trying to pursue photography as a hobby? Because we go two directions with this.
Well, no, I will mention one thing straight away, and that is the graph that you've flashed up many times. The photographer's journey. So the let's spend more money, we take a picture, we put it away. We see a better picture from someone's phone, and we get this, so we go and spend more money, and then we're still not getting the pictures we want. And it is going back to that learning. It's understanding. You just nothing's automatic these days. And I'm working in the software and IT industry. I'm getting very frustrated when people start talking about AI as if it's the next miracle thing. It's not. And people expecting the camera's end to say, "Oh, it's a bit like me saying, look, if I'm looking east and you point the camera east, you want to get a picture of what's happening to the north. It's not going to do that for you. It's basically it's just it's capturing what you see with your eye."
Don't you think that much of the frustration that photographers have these days comes from the fact that in today's 21st century culture that we live in, particularly in the West, I'm not sure other parts of the world probably view it the same way, but we've become used to having things instant. And we kind of want that instant in terms of our skill level. We'll pick up a camera and we want to take great pictures straight away. We're not prepared to put in the time to learn those processes so that they became laid down as synaptic pathways in our brain. We drive the car, I'll use the same analogy, we drive the car without thinking because we've got strong pathways between our neurons through habit. We don't have to think twice about it. You only really get command of the camera through constant repetition and doing it again and again and again. And if we don't get it straight away, we just give up. So many photographers give up because they don't get there straight away. The number of people who go on a 1-year course and then don't pick up the camera when it's over, it's quite frightening. And I know it's going to happen because it's human.
Absolutely.
Not so much when we were young lads, back into 1920s.
Speak for yourself.
But our generation viewed things differently because the culture was different. The culture then was you learn, you study, you apprentice, you spend time acquiring the skill. It's a
Mhm.
craft. It isn't instant.
Yeah,
Whereas
it
now
is.
we are
Yeah,
instant.
it is scary. My you know, very fortunate. I've got two beautiful little granddaughters. 4 and 6 years old.
Hmm.
And without any training at all. You show them your phone, you show them a picture. There's a picture of you. First thing they do is pinch, zoom, just to zoom in on them. How do they learn that at that age? It's like they're born with it, and yet it's taken us a long time. And also going the other way, I'm trying to educate my mum. We bought her an iPad about a year ago, and she's getting a little bit better, but it is quite slow, and you have to have a lot of patience. And I think that's the same with the camera side of it. It's picking that up. My wife, and you've mentioned it, but my wife says, we live in this one-click society. We expect everything on one click, and it's not right. We live in a throwaway society. Digital pictures, for example, I don't like delete, 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 delete. And yet, I was looking through a box of pictures with my mum the other day. We were looking for a couple of pictures of some old holidays to send to someone. And we were just going through boxes of old 6x4s. Just there we were, just reeling through these boxes and thinking, no, can't find it. But it just brought back. But when we were going through the memories, just
Yeah,
holding something.
yeah. Two questions left. Here's one for you to look at yourself personally. How do you stay inspired and motivated to keep going out taking fresh pictures? Or don't you? You can say if it's a
No, I
struggle.
mean that is a difficult one for me, and I know that we've had lots of conversations on this, because you making this investment, and sometimes that horrible four-letter word called time gets in the way, because you need time to go and take pictures, but at the same time, we are very busy, and I capture pictures when I can. We were driving along the road the other day, and there's a road near Guildford, and we were driving along, and there was a car park on there. And I'm just thinking, what a great place to stop and take pictures, because it is, quite a famous view from there. And I was thinking, I must come and do that one day. We'll get once things are right. I think back again. One of my early pictures, again before I came and see you, was of. I've taken a few at Windsor Castle, but it was Windsor Castle from the long walk on a very frosty morning. So there's me with a slight hangover after being at Twickenham the day before to watch an England rugby match. But I just got my camera, woke up, and there was a beautiful white frost. It was, I haven't seen a frost like it in years. So I just jumped in the car. It was still dusk. Drove into Windsor, parked up, walked along the along the long walk, and just looked back at the castle. Thought, there's a shot. Click. Now, I wish I'd have had a better camera to capture the megapixels and probably less grain on the picture. Now, looking back at that picture, I think, yeah, it's a shame I just kind of just took it very quickly and walked away. Um, but it's just having the time. So yeah, I do. I am more of an impromptu person. I don't walk around with a camera all the time because, I mean, Kevin, I like to use my big 70-200 Canon L series lens, which is quite a big white monster,
It is.
which is quite heavy to carry around all the time. I do love that lens. I absolutely adore the lens. But at the same time, it's quite a big beast to carry around. So it's not something you put in your pocket. I mean, I'm at the opposite end of you. I know you like using a small camera. I always have a battery grip on my camera, so I've obviously got the two batteries in there instead of one. I mean, I'm not like I'm taking millions of pictures. I don't know
I've
I
got
need it, but it
I've
just
got
fits my
battery grip
hands
on my 5D, mate. So
better. Yeah,
so
yeah.
no, I think they're a good idea because if I'm doing a wedding and I've got it with me, I do not
Oh,
want to
crikey,
hang
yeah,
out.
yeah. No, no. So, but no, where I can, I take the camera with me. But I'm always inspired to take pictures. It's just sometimes I just, have days where I don't have the camera with me, and then days where I think, well, I'm going to take the camera. So.
I think it's a common misconception to think that, and professionals especially, they never lose that motivation. They never go off the boil. That they
Mm.
constantly are taking. We all have bad days. It doesn't
Mm.
matter. Again, it doesn't have to be photography. Your hobby could be knitting or falconry, whatever it is. There are days where you just don't want to do it. So
No,
it's never going to be there the whole time. Look, I got a feeling I know you're going to answer this one because we've kind of already touched on it. But it's a question I normally end with.
Mhm.
So you're approached by someone, might be a young person who is looking at taking up photography. What advice would you give to someone who's just starting out with photography for the first time?
Knowing me, being the technical person I am, I'd either go two ways. I should, and the answer should be, I'd ask them what type of photography they want to take,
Yeah.
and then give them some advice on, how I would go about then looking into that. So the type of or the range of lenses I'd be looking at, just to give them an idea of where I think they should be looking at from a focal length. And then obviously the type of camera, knowing the cameras as well as I do now, and I do like to keep up to date with technology. I'm a technical person, so I am quite aware of the camera makes, the ranges, the types of features that you get on all the different cameras. So, I'm the kind of person that you'd find annoying in a shop. If you were in a camera store somewhere, I'd be saying, don't get that one, it doesn't do this. Like you mentioned earlier about, has he got IBIS, blah, 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 Yeah, but for me, I think it's more about just giving the person some understanding if they were going to become, either a landscape photographer or a portrait photographer or a wedding photographer, or just do street photography, just to give them a range of ideas around the type of body, the size of camera. We have a photography channel on one of our chat systems at work, and we got just a channel dedicated to amateur photographers. And there was a guy asking on there the other day about he wanted to get a smaller camera than most DSLRs and what people think. And there was tons of answers on there, and it was getting quite an interesting chat around the size of camera. He wanted just coming into London, when he come into our office in London, and he just wanted something small that he can have in his pocket that was much better than your camera you get on your phone, that it could just give him a bit more control. But he didn't want to carry a DSLR or a mirrorless. And yet there's a couple of guys that come into the office in London they will have their Fuji or their Canons over their shoulder, ready to go, just as they see anything interesting as they come in off the transport systems. So I think for me, I just been, understanding now more about I call it the science of photography, and understanding the basic rules. I'd just be saying to them, this is what I would be looking for, and obviously if, the next question would be then, do you have a budget in mind? Just so I can advise people. Because again, I've got a pretty rough but firm understanding on the price of the camera ranges and where you're looking at. If someone says, if I wanted a Canon R3 and I wanted the big white lens like yours, I'd be looking, have you got 10 grand in your pocket? Because you're not going to get any change out of that. So it's just, again, letting people know that, obviously photography has an expense as well.
Brilliant. Well, with your permission, I'll put your phone number at the bottom of here so that anyone who has any questions can give you a call. Do you know what, David? We've been talking now for quite some time. On my screen, and I may edit it down below this, but we've been talking for just over 50 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I will try and chop some of this out just to get it down to more listenable space. On the other hand, when I play it back, if I think this is compelling listening, I might leave it all there. Mistakes and all.
You'll be down at 10 minutes then, I think, with me waffling on. But yeah, no, I've enjoyed it, Kevin. It's good to have a conversation like this. And
thank you for giving your time up and for
my pleasure.
speaking so well. Obviously, I interrupt occasionally, but most of this session, I think, was over to you. So I'm delighted about that. Thank you for giving up your time and your thoughts. And until the next time you and I meet face to face.
Yes, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everybody.